Hi, Alec. Here we are on the Monday after the election, and we still don't know really who's going to form government. What what is your sense of things today as the folks wake up on a Monday morning?
Well, the short answer, Harold, is that we really don't know at this point, and I think everyone is waiting. All the parties, all the pundits, everyone is waiting for the Saturday recount of those two ridings in Surrey City Centre and Wandafuka Malahat. And until that happens, we're kind of left up in the air about what the path forward is. Those recounts will determine if the results remain the same, with the NDP with 46 seats, Conservatives with 45, and Greens with 2. Then we're looking at a situation where the NDP could form a minority government with the support of the Greens. What that looks like, we still don't know. The Greens were, well, they were kind of shunted to the side in 2020, a year before the confidence and supply agreement with the NDP last time, starting in 2017, was supposed to end. And so I'm not so sure that they'll be ready to jump into another CASA agreement with the NDP this time. The speculation is that we might be looking at something where it's vote by vote. The Greens lend their support to the NDP. On the other side, if it remains the same, the math really doesn't work for the Conservatives. They've got 45 seats. If you add the Greens, that's 47 seats. That is the narrowest of majorities with the two parties combined. But at the same time, you still need to appoint a speaker. And so that would bring them down to 46 seats, tied with the NDP, and it wouldn't work. That they wouldn't be able to keep the confidence of the House in that scenario. And now I'm sure this is not what anybody wants to hear, but if there's no agreement reached, if the NDP go and try to meet the confidence of the House and fail, then we could be seeing another election at some point here in the new year, possibly. There's nothing written down as to when they have to meet the House and see whether they can retain the confidence of it, or whether Janet Austin, the lieutenant governor, will even give them that chance. So really everything is still up in the air at this point, and it's hard to determine what the actual scenario is going to be moving forward.
In that context, election or no election on the horizon, EB and Rustad took very different approaches on Saturday night in their speeches at the end of the night. You know, EB talking about how we all need to come together sounded much more like somebody who wanted to try to rule with his slim lead in the House, whereas Rustad said, we want to get back out there, bring these guys down, and have an election. So they seem to be at polar opposites, not surprisingly, perhaps, at this point at least.
Yes, they are at polar opposites. After, talking about a vote split and not wanting the Greens to get any seats in the legislature, saying, oh, a vote for the Greens is a vote for John Rustad. David Eby changed his tune on Saturday night and made an appeal to the Greens, said he had called Sonia Furstenau, who, for at least the moment, remains the leader of the Greens, even if she doesn't hold a seat in the legislature, and said that he looks forward to working with the Greens, said they share a lot of the same progressive values, they have a lot of the same ideas on policies and what the issues are, and that was kind of very much a mea culpa for EB to come forward with, whereas Rustad, on the other hand, was saying that, the job's not finished, the job's not done, we want that Conservative government, and if we can't do that, if the math doesn't work at this point, then we will do our utmost to bring down the NDP government at the earliest opportunity, which might be easier said than done, depending on what the agreement is with the Greens. Right. But because at this point, I'm not sure if the Conservatives are even going to try to reach an agreement with the Greens. Because the math doesn't work to form government, but even to bring the NDP down, I'm not sure what they're thinking there is. But at the same time, it sounds like Rustad's raring for another election, and that very well could be what we're staring down the barrel of within the next year or so.
Now, you mentioned the recounts. There's also the 49,000 votes, and these are late mail-in ballots, as well as people who voted in one riding for candidates in a different riding because they weren't in their riding, I guess, on the day of the election. 49,000 votes. I mean, do we have any sense of which party might lay claim to a majority of those votes?
We have no idea because we have no idea where they voted, where they're voting, like where they voted from, what riding they're voting for. We have no idea at this point. So those 49,000 votes, it's very much pixie dust in terms of what we understand about them. And so that's another factor, right? Is that could be another determining factor. We really don't know how concentrated or sparse those votes are. If they're for a whole bunch of different ridings across the province, the likelihood that they're going to have a large impact is small. If they're for a
Right.
few concentrated ridings, then they could have a much larger impact. But at this point, it's too early to tell, and very hard to say anything definitive about those votes.
Right. Well, you're right. If 49,000 sounds like a big number, but across the entire province, that's only maybe 500 votes per riding, which is not a significant number. Unless you're talking about a riding that is separated by 23 votes, then that, I guess, could make a difference.
Hello, Wanda Fuka Malahat.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fascinating recount to see how that all goes down. And with 23 votes, I'm reminded of Courtney Comox in
Yes.
2017, where it was called on election night for the BC Liberals and then switched to the NDP after a recount. So
Right.
really don't know at this point.
And there's got to be a couple of dozen people in that riding who are kicking themselves for not getting out to vote.
I loved Vaughn Palmer's story in one of his columns recently where he talked about Atlin way back when it was lost. The Socreds lost that seat by one vote, and then the candidate for the Socreds acknowledged that him and his wife hadn't voted, and so if they had, he would have won that seat. He would be heading to Victoria, but instead, no, he was staying home.
Well, let's hope that the candidates and their families all voted there. There could be some tense discussions in the days ahead. All right, Alec, you've got a lot of work to do between now and the weekend and after that. So we'll let you go to it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Harold.